In our lesson today, we are going to look at comparing the properties of two functions such as their output, slope, and y-intercepts when those functions are depicted as either equations, tables, or graphs. So our goal is learning to calculate a function's output, slope, and y-intercept regardless of how the function is depicted, so we can compare those properties. Let's start with a function presented as a table. First, we begin by finding the slope using the following formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. For a table, that means subtracting a y value in the table, y1, from the value that follows it in the table, y2, and then doing the same for the corresponding x values. Here, you can see that for the x and y values, I'm choosing -4, -11 for x2 and y2, and -8 and -19 for x1 and y1. So that gives us -11 minus -19 over -4 minus -8. Simplified, that becomes 8 over 4, or a slope of 2. With the slope determined to be 2, now we can turn our attention to finding the y-intercept. We do that by plugging in the value for slope and a pair of x and y values from the table into the slope-intercept formula and solving for b. So we get y equals 2x plus b. I've selected for our x and y values -8 and -19. So we get -19 equals 2 times -8 plus b. -19 equals -16 after we do the multiplication plus b. In order to isolate the variable b, we then add 16 to both sides, and we get -3 is equal to b. So our y-intercept then becomes -3. Once we have an equation for the function, it becomes easy to find the output value y for any input value. We plug the value in for x into the formula and calculate the y value. So here we get y equals 2x minus 3. If we substitute in the value of 5 for x, we get y equals 10 minus 3, or y equals 7 when the input value of x is 5. Now let's turn our attention to functions presented as graphs. Finding the slope from a graph begins by selecting 2 points on the line and plugging them into the slope formula. Here I've selected 2, 4 for our x1, y1, and 5, 7 for our x2, y2. Plugging those values into our slope formula, we get 7 minus 4 over 5 minus 2, which simplifies to 3 over 3, which further simplifies to 1. So the slope of the line depicting the function is 1. On a graph, the y-intercept is the place where the line crosses the y-axis. Here you can see clearly that the line crosses the y-axis at 2. You could also calculate the y-intercept using the slope and a coordinate point on the line, as you just did for a function presented as a table. Using y equals x plus b because our slope was 1, we then plug in 5. So we have 1 times 5 gives us 5. 7 equals 5 plus b. Subtracting 5 from both sides to isolate the variable b, we get 2 for our y-intercept. 2 equals b. On a graph, in order to find the y value for any given x, you locate that x value on the x-axis and find where the value intersects the function's line on the graph, which will give you the coordinate point that provides the solution and therefore the value of y for the given x. Here in our example, we've chosen 5 on the x-axis, and as you can see, following that up until it intersects with the line, becomes 5, 7. So our value for y is 7 when the value for x is 5. Finally, let's turn our attention to functions presented as equations. The equation is the easiest of the three presentations by far. The equation is in the slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. So for the equation above, y equals 2x plus 4, the slope is 2 and the y-intercept is 4. You find the output y for the input value x by plugging the input value in for x and calculating y, just as you did with a table. Now that we know how to find the various properties of a function, whether it's presented in table, graph, or equation form, we can compare them. Answer the questions about the functions presented on the right. Which one has the greatest slope? Which one has the lesser y-intercept? If the input for the function, the x value, was 6, what is the output of the function, or the y value? You may want to pause the video at this point to do your calculations. Which one has the greatest slope? The function a has a slope of 3 over 2. We take the 2 points, plug them into the formula, and that's our answer. Slope of function b is 2 over 3. We get that by selecting 2 values from the table and plugging them into the formula. The slope of function c is given in the equation. It's the coefficient of the x value, and that is 2. Function c has the greatest slope. Which one has the lesser y-intercept? The y-intercept of function a is 1. That is where the line crosses the y-axis. The y-intercept of function b can be found by selecting 2 points from the table and plugging them into the y equals mx plus b formula. We previously know that 2/3 was the slope, so we select here -9 for x and -4 for y, and we simply solve for b, which becomes 2. The y-intercept for function c is based upon the formula itself, and it's 4. So function a has the lesser y-intercept. The value for y, if the input value was 6, the value for y for function a is 10. We go to 6 on the x-axis, draw a line up looking to where that would intersect with the line for the function, and that provides us with the solution, which is coordinate point 6, 10, which tells us that for the input 6, the output is 10. The value for function b is found using the y equals mx plus b formula. We know the slope was 2/3. We simply plug 6 in for the value of x and solve. So y is 6 when x is 6. The value for y for function c is found the same way. We simply substitute 6 in for the value of x, and we find that y is equal to 16.